Everyone in New York knows the Brooklyn Bridge. It's the skyline's anchor, a triumph of 19th century ambition, the link between Manhattan and Brooklyn. But for the men who built it, it was something else entirely, a place of risk, sickness, and death. Behind the celebration of progress was a brutal truth. This bridge was a death trap for the people who gave their lives to raise it. The story begins before a single cable was spun. In June 1869, while surveying the East River, the bridge's designer, John A. Roebling, suffered a horrific accident when a ferry crushed his foot. Infection set in, and he died a few weeks later of tetanus. His death could have stopped the project, but his son Washington Roebling, a 32-year-old Civil War engineer, took over. He had learned bridge building from his father, but no one, not even him, could have foreseen what the work would do to his body or to the men under his command. To build towers that could reach bedrock under the East River, engineers had to use a new and dangerous technology: pneumatic caissons, giant, airtight wooden boxes sunk to the river bottom. Workers, nicknamed sandhogs, descended into these boxes through airlocks and excavated soil under immense air pressure so the towers could stand on solid ground. Inside those chambers, the air was thick, the light dim, and the sound constant: the hiss of compressors, the pounding of hammers, the rumble of carts. Men toiled for hours breathing compressed air, often 80 feet below the surface, and few understood what that pressure did to the human body. The first caisson, on the Brooklyn side, was sunk in 1870. The second, under Manhattan, went even deeper. Men began falling ill with a mysterious paralysis, pain in the joints, shortness of breath, dizziness, sudden collapses. Doctors called it caisson disease. Today we know it as decompression sickness, or the bends. When workers rose too quickly from high-pressure air to normal atmosphere, nitrogen bubbles formed in their blood, damaging nerves and organs. Even Washington Roebling himself wasn't spared. In 1872, while inspecting the Brooklyn caisson, he became violently ill. He survived but was left partially paralyzed, his hearing and eyesight weakened. From then on, he directed the bridge from a window of his house in Brooklyn Heights. His wife, Emily Warren Roebling, became his voice and eyes, carrying instructions to the site each day and learning enough engineering to oversee details herself. But while the Roebling story is well known, the names of the dead are mostly forgotten. Accidents were constant: men crushed by falling stones, laborers thrown from scaffolds hundreds of feet above the river, workers struck by flying metal as cables whipped loose in high winds. Safety gear didn't exist: no harnesses, no helmets, no guardrails. The exact death toll depends on who you ask. Official records list around 20 to 30 worker deaths, but contemporary engineers like E.F. Farrington, who supervised the cable work, believe the number might have reached 40 or more once unrecorded injuries and later deaths were counted. Many of the victims were recent immigrants, Irish, German, or Italian, whose names barely appeared in newspapers. And even those who survived sometimes paid lifelong prices. Dozens were disabled by caisson disease, limping, blind, or partially paralyzed, sent home without compensation. There were no workers' comp laws in the 1870s. A man hurt on the job simply lost his wage and his future. When the bridge's towers were finished, a new set of dangers appeared. Crews had to spin the steel wire cables, a process that meant walking narrow foot ropes hundreds of feet above the East River. Gusts of wind could knock a man into the water. The bridge was one of the first major structures in the world to use steel wire instead of iron, and though it made the bridge stronger, it also created unpredictable tension. Despite every risk, the bridge kept rising. By 1877, the tower stood complete, and the web of cables stretched across the river like a vast spider's web. Construction continued through financial crises, political scandals, and harsh winters. Each delay meant more strain on workers to meet deadlines. Finally, on May 24, 1883, after 14 years of work, the Brooklyn Bridge opened to the public. It was hailed as the eighth wonder of the world. Over 150,000 people crossed that first day. Emily Roebling rode in the first carriage, carrying a rooster as a symbol of victory. Bands played, cannons fired, and politicians congratulated themselves on progress. But not everyone celebrated. Families of the fallen weren't mentioned in speeches. Their names weren't etched into plaques. For them, the bridge represented something different, a monument to sacrifice without recognition. And even the public's joy didn't last long. 6 days after the grand opening, on May 30th, 1883, a rumor spread through the bridge's walkway that the structure was collapsing. Panic erupted. People rushed to escape, trampling others in the narrow passage. By the time the crowd stopped, 12 people were dead and dozens more injured. It was the city's first major mass casualty disaster on the bridge, but not its last. Still, the Brooklyn Bridge survived and became immortal. For New York, it symbolized connection, modernity, and confidence. But the story that gets told in textbooks usually ends with celebration, not with the bodies left behind. The truth is that this engineering marvel was built with techniques no one fully understood, and the cost was hidden behind progress. The caissons, the cables, the granite, all came at a human price. Immigrant laborers paid a few dollars a day, risked their lives in exchange for a chance to feed their families. They died in the shadows of a project that made other men famous. The bridge's success helped push forward modern engineering safety. Doctors studying caisson disease learned enough from the Brooklyn Project to later design decompression protocols for tunnels and divers. But those lessons were written in blood. Today, when you walk across that wooden boardwalk and see the East River glittering below, it's easy to forget how dangerous this place once was. Beneath your feet are the same stone towers that crushed men during construction. Beneath the water lie the caissons where others suffocated or collapsed from the bends. The Brooklyn Bridge is often described as a monument to perseverance. It is, but it's also a memorial. Not an official one with names and dates, but a silent one, built into every cable and stone. Those 19th century workers didn't have safety nets or unions or benefits. What they had was courage, necessity, and a willingness to gamble with their lives to make something that would outlive them. That's what makes this story more than tragedy. It's a reminder that behind every skyline achievement are workers whose sacrifices rarely make the headlines. The bridge wasn't built by visionaries alone. It was built by men who went to work each morning knowing they might not come home. So the next time you stand on the bridge and watch the city move around you, remember that. Beneath the beauty is a foundation of risk and endurance. The Brooklyn Bridge is a triumph, but it's also a tomb for the forgotten laborers who built it. Because before it was an icon, before it was poetry in steel and stone, it was something far more human, a death trap for workers and the price of a city's progress.